Welcome to the second vlog by Pale Blue Thoughts. We would like to thank you for your awesome response for our first video and for your invaluable feedback. We have tried to incorporate most of it, if not all of the feedback that we received in this video. Hope you find the differences in this video.
Many of you mentioned that our first video was a bit too long, so we have tried to reduce the time by dividing our topics into various chapters. Today's topic is a continuation of promoting scientific temper. However, we'll be looking at some practical aspects of thinking scientifically. We look at why some people fail to think scientifically and believe in unscientific ideas. Oh, by the way, if you have not watched our first video, please do so. And if you have watched our first video and not clicked on that little subscribe button, please do so now.
Let's start with a story. Once upon a time, in a far, far away land called Colorado in the US, there lived a farmer named Lloyd Olson. The year was 1945 and Olson was planning to have supper with his mother-in-law, and he was sent out to the yard by his wife to bring back a chicken. Olson chose a 5.5-month-old chicken named Mike. He took an axe and proceeded to cut its head off. The axe removed the bulk of the head but had missed the jugular vein, leaving one ear and most of the brainstem intact.
Due to Olson's failed attempt to behead Mike, the chicken was still able to balance on a perch and walk clumsily. He attempted to even preen, peck for food and crow, although with limited success. When Mike did not die, Olson instead decided to take care for the bird. He fed it with a mixture of milk and water via an eyedropper and gave it small grains of corn and worms. Mike was put on display to the public for an admission cost of 25 cents. At the height of his popularity, the chicken's owner earned $4,500 per month, which is worth rupees 51,500 rupees today. Mike was then valued at $10,000. The chicken lived for another 18 whopping months, running around literally as a headless chicken. It was determined that the axe has missed the jugular vein and had a clot which prevented Mike from bleeding to death. Although most of his head was severed, most of his brainstem and one ear were left on his body. Since basic functions like breathing, heart rate, etc., and most of a chicken's reflex actions are controlled by the brainstem, Mike was able to remain quite healthy. This is a good example of central motor generators enabling basic homeostatic functions to be carried out in the absence of higher brain center.
Imagine if this would have happened in India. Imagine what all miracle stories would have been added to this. And most certainly, faith and belief would have overtaken the scientific reason behind why this was possible. So why do human beings fall for these superstitions and blind beliefs so easily? And when we say that we do not believe in any kind of superstitions or blind beliefs, are we intending to say that we are in any way superior to all those around who believe in them? No, it's never that.
The knowledge we have now is not our personal knowledge. It's the knowledge of the society that we live in. We know so much now about our universe since this data is available to us. Thousands of years ago, humans did not have this knowledge. For example, when around 10,000 years ago, humans started agriculture and stopped roaming and started living in colonies, they did not know how rain or sun originated. They needed this for their agriculture and only knew that all these came from above the sky. So their brain at that time believed that someone from up above controlled all this. If they experienced thunderstorm, they did not know that what had actually caused this. Probably this person or a thing or a power who is above the sky is angry and they started pleading to him to stop. When that didn't work, they looked at ways of pleasing this invisible power. Gradually, whenever they needed rain, they started pleading or praying, looking at the sky. Coincidentally, it would have happened that many times after they prayed, the wind stopped or rain started. So this was how the brain started to strongly believe in what they assumed.
Other reasons why human brain easily falls for superstitions include childhood indoctrination, fear of death, old age, when we are emotionally sad due to some bad occurrences like some loved one's death, poor education system, and the mentality of learning subjects just for acquiring a job, or for earning money, or for competition.
Just to give an example of how being educated does not have anything to do with having a scientific temper, Lufthansa and Air France are leading flight companies, and they do not have row 13 on their flight. Many hotels also do not have 13th floor. For years, hoteliers have succumbed to this old good-fashioned superstition when they have crafted their blueprints. By removing the 13th floor, many hotel owners are simply making sure they don't alienate any superstitious clients. All such beliefs, starting from small ones like wearing a sacred band or ring on hand, to extreme ones like performing animal or human sacrifices to please someone, all are a product of this evolutionary human brain.
The list of superstitions that people believe is endless. We won't go through the normal ones like breaking a mirror will lead to 7 years of bad luck, or you will have a bad day if a black cat crosses your path, etc. These everyone knows about. We will look at some lesser known examples. The 10th standard biology textbook under the state syllabus taught in Kerala mentions 4 reasons for HIV spread. 1. Sharing needles or syringes used by HIV infected people. 2. Body fluids. 3. HIV infected mother to the fetus. And number 4. Sexual activities before marriage.
This text prepared by SCERT had been in use since 2016 before they decided to change it in their 2019 and 20 printing edition, after it had gone viral in social media and several doctors and experts objected to it. This is the status of an education system that is known to be amongst the best in the country. This is what is fed into the children's already indoctrinated mind.
The level of superstitions in India is at times shocking, and we would also say it's an insult to human intelligence and the human brain. This is mainly due to the lack of scientific temper. You can see the rush at gold shops on Akshaya Tritiya. People think that buying gold on that day will lead to prosperity. Shops sometimes are forced to down their shutters due to the crowds. Recently, they have alternate solutions to avoid crowding at their shops. You buy gold any day, and they will give you a bill generated on the day of Akshaya Tritiya. And then you get prosperous. Talk about fooling the system. Yet some people do get prosperous, the jewelry owners. How easily they marketed the gullible public, and yet we remain as gullible as ever.
What science does is that it tries to explain things in the most accurate way as possible. It does not say what ought to be or what should be. It simply says what is. Science is always morally neutral. Science was hard to put together a hypothesis to understanding how the universe was made or how humans evolved by conducting experiments after experiments and then careful analysis of evidence. At the other end, there are the so-called creationists who have ready-made answers for all these questions. They say they know everything, as everything about human and universe is already either written in their sacred texts or they have obtained it through revelation.
Science never says that it knows everything. Science studies and shares results based on the best evidences available at a certain point in time. Science welcomes any corrections and tries to improve its findings always. Pseudoscience, on the other hand, stays right where it originated and doesn't move an inch forward. People say when you talk too much about science or follow science too much, you lose morality. Perhaps they are talking about nuclear bombs or pesticides. Yes, science has this problem, that when it designs an object, let's say a knife for instance, a knife can be used to cut vegetables or to slit the throat of a fellow human being. What use we put it to is dependent on us. Science will always tell you the best way to do things. What you do with it, it is completely down to you. However, if you use a scientific temper, you would use that same knife to chop vegetables instead of taking the life of a fellow human.
Another reason why science is not as popular as other methods of knowledge is that science does not take anecdotal evidence. Someone's personal experience cannot be considered as evidence. Science does not refute these anecdotes, but simply takes it as raw data and then puts it to experiments and verifications. So since science do not agree to these things easily, people do not like it very much. Common sense forms a vital part in its formation of opinions and beliefs in our daily lives, and also to understand the nature of things that are happening around us. However, when we try to combine science with common sense, we tend to reach a risky combination. Common sense stems from the various beliefs that we have already imprinted in our minds. We have already made an impression in our minds about the nature, the various things that happen in nature, and we call it using that lovely word common sense. Let's do an experiment.
Let us assume that you climb onto your terrace with a ball in your hand and you drop it from the top of the terrace to the ground below. I am sure everyone would assume that the ball will drop to the ground and not fly off into outer space. Something in your mind tells you that it will fall to the ground. Common sense. Now let us take two similar bottles, one filled with water and the other an empty one of the same shape and size. Hold both at both ends of your body at arm's length at the same height and you drop it. Which one do you think will reach the ground first? One is an empty bottle and the other weighs around 1 kilo as it contains 1 liter of water. If you're those lucky ones who still remember what you studied in school, you would say both reach at the same time. If you're not sure, or if you're not one of those lucky ones and you now need to think which one would reach first, you will have to use your common sense. Common sense might tell you that the one with the water would reach since it is heavier. However, if you do this at your home and you would see that it reaches at the same time. You may go one step further and make this a physical experiment and try it yourself. Just make sure you use a plastic bottle and you have enough towels to dry the floor if the bottle breaks. When you do this experiment is when you get that thrill of achievement.
You can try this experiment in a different manner. You can tie a string to the bottles and tie the other end of the string to your roof or a fan. Now pull back both and let them oscillate like a pendulum. Now ask your common sense as to which one would oscillate more in 1 minute. If it again says that one of them should oscillate more, then go back to your test books. In fact, both will oscillate the same amount of times in 1 minute.
So now you are in a dilemma. Whom should you believe? Should we believe our common sense and the notions that we have created in our minds about the nature? Or what actually happens in the real world? This means that the tool that we use to judge falling of the ball just didn't work in the next two scenarios. We have made many mental pictures in our minds about the world around us. When I say the word apple, you immediately picturize a red shiny apple in your mind. Now let's say I say the word a heavy coconut. You immediately get a picture of a coconut and you also get an idea about the word heavy. You know roughly how much a coconut would weigh. You would assume that I am not talking about a 10-ton coconut. We have created many pictures in our minds with regards to the various things that we can perceive and make impressions about.
However, there are some issues with creating such mental pictures. They are called limits of perception. If I were to tell you that I have a bag of rice weighing 5 kilos in one hand and in my other hand I have a can of water weighing around 20 kilos, you can easily perceive the difference. Now I tell you to picturize a goods train and ask you to perceive the weight of that goods train. Are you able to picturize the weight of it? Now I ask you to compare the difference in weight between a freight train and a passenger train. Is your mind getting fogged? The issue is here not to think if you are able to weigh a goods train, but to see if you can perceive the difference of weights like you did with the rice and the water example. You can write all these things in a book and remember when you see it. But at the end of the day, they are just numbers on a sheet of paper. However, to make a mental picture of it, like we did earlier with an apple, is impossible. There are fundamental things in nature, but our brain fails to process them. So now we ask the question to ourselves, are we using the right tool to judge our experiences? All this brings us to evolution and how our brains have evolved. The survival of the fittest say that the organisms best adjusted to their environment are the most successful in surviving and reproducing.
So what kind of a brain was the best for humans to have when they were getting evolved? Human brain is evolutionarily designed to believe things without verification or evidence. Human primates had to have a blind belief for their survival. What were the problems that humans faced in those days which gradually led them to develop a bigger and better brain? Did they have to worry about how many likes they got for their Facebook or Instagram photos or their TikTok videos? No. They had different priorities. They had to escape from the predators that came to attack them and to hunt those animals which he could catch and eat.
10,000s of years ago, when Homo sapiens lived as wanderers in forest who survived on hunting and gathering, if they heard a loud noise behind a bush or a tree, they had to assume or believe that it was a lion or some predator and run away without verifying or checking for evidence. This had to be the only way how his brain would have thought in order to increase the chances of his survival. Even if he verified 100 times what the sound was and 99 times he found that it was just a fruit which had fallen from a tree, it was okay because he would have survived. But even if once it turned out to be a lion, then he would have had been its dinner. So the primate brain of those days encouraged him to do what was best for him and his survival, which was to blindly believe that it could be a lion and hence avoid verifying the same.
All the things and technologies that you see today have only existed since the last, say, 200 years or less. Our brains are still what our Stone Age ancestors had. Yes, there is a greatly developed frontal cortex, but our brainstem is still very primitive, and this is where our beliefs reside. Our brains have survived with these limited abilities for thousands of years, and we continue to survive with those skills even now. It is just that our priorities have changed from getting hunted to getting Facebook or Instagram likes. Our brains have been evolved to make quick decisions, quick, come on, to escape from the predators and to catch those animals we can eat. And so we still make decisions very quickly about the things that happen around us and arrive at a conclusion without thinking too much. This is the reason why we tend to fall for superstitions. So we end up believing WhatsApp encyclopedias, which throw such information such as drinking water when standing up will lead to the water hitting the stomach walls with such a force that it will damage them. It is very easy for our brains to believe such false notions. Go ahead, blame evolution.
Science is like this. It's always against your common sense. But even when we say this, we are developing common sense through science. For some people at least. Now, some years back, people believed that the earth was flat. We have cursed and thrown into jails those people who claimed that it was round. But as science grew, we learned to accept the fact that it was indeed round. This has now become part of our common sense, and it has happened over time. Now, to conclude this topic, do not argue that the nature should fall in line with your common sense. Instead, disengage nature from your common sense and learn to study it in detail. That is the method of science, and follow that to enhance your way of thinking and understanding the natural world better and to remove superstitions and lead a scientific life.
We thank you for your time today, and our next topic is on the evolution of science and how it has come to make our lives better. Please do like and comment on this video if you like it. Please ensure that you hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon next to it. So till the next time, keep that scientific temper surging.